Hey guys, doing something a bit different today. I've got my new mic, Blue Yeti, fairly new webcam. Doing a little vlog today about Eastern and Western philosophy of all things. Probably gonna have an update video for my channel soon, so if you've been curious as to, why I haven't been posting and the direction of my channel going forward, you're probably gonna have something to look forward to pretty soon. But I've just been itching to make a video soon and been itching to try out the vlog style because, some of the more vlog type videos I made in the past have been the most enjoyable for me to do and go back and listen to myself. So I think, regardless of how much more like essay content I do going forward, which I still do enjoy, I think I definitely want to add some more vlogging in. So with that, let's go into the idea that Eastern philosophy is more practical than Western. So, Eastern philosophy and the way it's presented is often like cryptic and mystical. Like if you read the Eastern texts, it's almost like reading a fiction book of some kind. But when you get down into what it's all about, it's far more grounded in practice. So like Western ideas, like if you read any Western philosophy, or I'm sure you've heard the idea that Western philosophy is very bogged down in the semantics, and some of the worst ones like Kant and Hegel are almost impenetrable to read by the majority of people at all. And it's you can't really blame Western philosophy for that because it's necessary to be so granular and specific with your language when you're trying to convey ideas like in a logical way so that they make a model of the world. That's a lot of what Western philosophy is trying to do. I think that's another way to put it, is that you're making a model of the world through language, so it has to be very specific, and unfortunately it has to be difficult to understand sometimes because of that, from a linguistic point of view. And when I say that like Eastern philosophy is more practical, I don't mean that it's better or that it makes more sense to follow. I mean literally it's based more in practices rather than in theory. So certain practices such as like meditation, dedication to family, gratefulness, these kinds of things, maybe like attunement with nature, these are the kind of things you're going to see pop up more often in Eastern philosophy. And a lot of it, I don't want to generalize too much here, but I'd say at least with a lot of Chinese culture, there's a lot of tenets to follow. Like with Lao Tzu's legalism, it's a lot about tenets and traditional ideas that have been sort of refined, and practices that you can follow to lead a better life is more what it's about. So when I say that one is more practical, I just mean that it's based in practice. It's not necessarily a statement of value. And certainly Western thought is more logical, as I said before, while Eastern thought is more holistic and concerned with sort of making you feel the ideas just as much or more than understanding them logically. But with that said, even reading their texts, it's almost more trying to wash you over with the ideas rather than like making you understand the model. It's a lot more like fiction, where if you read a Western philosophical text, it's a lot more like reading a long essay. And I guess you could say, this vlog is a lot more like Eastern practice, while my essay content, my video edited content is more like Western philosophical practice. And with that said, I'm going to read a passage from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, and we're going to talk about that. I do my utmost to attain emptiness. I hold firmly to stillness. The myriad creatures all rise together, and I watch their return. The teeming creatures all return to their separate roots. Returning to one's roots is known as stillness. This is what is meant by returning to one's destiny. Returning to one's destiny is known as the constant. Knowledge of the constant is known as discernment. Woe to him who willfully innovates while ignorant of the constant. But should one act from knowledge of the constant, one's action will lead to impartiality, impartiality to kingliness, kingliness to heaven, heaven to the way, which is like Tao, Tao Te Ching, Tao, all the same thing. It's all means the way. It all means, the essence, the structure of the universe. Kingliness to heaven, heaven to the way to perpetuity, and at the end of one's days, one will meet with no danger. So, this is like a notoriously difficult to understand text, because it's more cryptic and mystical rather than being like logically difficult to understand. You sort of have to, read between the lines and recognize the patterns between the passages. But essentially, what it's saying is that, if you listen, if you listen to the tradition and you are open to the experience of what is happening to you all the time through the way, then you will lead a better life than if you try to innovate and make your own way. And that brings me to my next point about Eastern philosophy, is that it's not only based on practice, but it's based on the practices of the past. In other words, history. There's a philosophy YouTuber, Wes Cecil, who teaches large groups of people, and he explains to them certain concepts in philosophy and a little bit of history. And he explains that Eastern philosophies, such as China, look back a lot on tradition to see what worked. So there's a power to this that society needs, right? As we look back to the past, we can sort of cut away everything that didn't work, and we're going to get something that, it may not be perfect going forward, and it runs the risk of becoming obsolete, but at least it worked for us for a long time, and a lot of it's probably going to work going forward. And that's sort of its benefit to society, is that we cling to these sort of traditions like family or religion or the practices such as meditation, and these things can lead to a better life because they did in the past. So it's essentially the same thing now with some minor changes. Why would it not be valuable? But Western thought is more innovative, which specifically the passage I read in the Tao Te Ching warns against. It says, "Woe to him who innovates without sort of paying attention to the way." But we, as a society, and I'm using society in a broad context because I think in modern day, I'm sorry I'm talking so quietly and my voice is cracking. It's because it's nighttime and I don't want to wake anybody up. But we need that in today's society, which I think is much more integrated, with the internet and everything. We need that innovation as a species to move forward, especially, with the, potentially existential problems that we face all the time. So, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I think we need both as a society, and I think we need both as individuals as well. It's very useful to have habits. Even Benjamin Franklin, he was obviously a great Western thinker. He recognized the importance of habits. He had a journal. He was very rigorous in the way that he went about his day, and the values that he had. He thought about them consciously, and that's sort of an Eastern idea in a way. And the habits that we do every day. Personally, I practice meditation, just the very simple act of focusing on your breath, and I found that it's helped me just to sort of parse the information that's coming at me better, and to help deal with anxiety. But at the same time, Western philosophy is important to the individual because it gives you sort of like these thought germs, like these earworms, these ideas that sort of dig their way into your brain and sort of give you sort of creative ambitions toward the future, an idea that you can take and you can create something out of. That's the whole idea of, the entrepreneur. You take an idea or a need that society wants, and you go out and you create a product or a service that can fulfill that need. And that's a very Western idea. But I think, as a society and as individuals, we need both to function properly. We need to look to the past, and we need to focus on the experience that's happening right now. But we also benefit a lot from using our mind to sort of come up with what's happening, what's going to be effective in the future. And in both cases of Eastern and Western philosophy, I want to defer to another book that would be Boethius's The Consolation of Philosophy. And there's a lot in this book. I should probably make a separate video on this book because it's one of the few that I've actually annotated extensively, because I read it twice for a college essay that I was really invested in for whatever reason. But the idea from the book that I want to talk about is the fact that philosophy is a tool that man uses to sort of raise himself up. In the book, Boethius is sort of on death row, and philosophy is his consolation, as the title goes, the consolation of philosophy. But even before he was dead, he recognizes philosophy as this figure that man uses to help himself. The way I like to describe it is it's like a cane, man is sort of, he's beaten down by life, and he's crawling on the ground, but philosophy is the cane he uses to, with knowledge and with practice, he can sort of raise himself up for the better. And that's how I see philosophy myself. That's why I find it important, because what could be more important than trying to better ourselves with history and with our own assets as human beings, our minds. So that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I've never done a blog before. This is kind of different for me, but I feel pretty comfortable doing it. I know it sounds like my voice is cracking, but again, I'm mostly just trying to be quiet. Should have some more interesting vlogs for you, maybe about less heady topics, but I just sort of thought of this and I wanted to do it, so hope you enjoyed.